All right, welcome to our Q&A for OT627 Exegesis of Psalms. It's good to be with. We have a couple here, folks here live, and I have one question from a student who's not here, so I'm just going to start with that one. The question was, when you're writing the actual exegesis papers, Module 7 and Module 8, which again we're really about a little over a week away from Module 7 still. When you're doing the verse-by-verse work, how do you know what the most important part, the focus is? And obviously that's a little easier to answer for the final paper because it's longer. But essentially that's what the skill that we're trying to build with Module 7 is, because you only have 1,200 words. You have to learn to make the decision on what the most important part is. So that's going to come out of some of your research. And you'll start with by reading the text really carefully. Some kind of cheat ways to get at this would be observe places in the text where English translations don't agree. Then you would know that would be a place you might want to focus. You'd also want to focus on keywords that might need some explanation. Any part of the text that's not obviously understandable would be a place that you'd want to bring out in the paper. And so those are some of the ways that you would narrow it down. The key piece with a short paper is you can't deal with every possible aspect. So what you would want to think to yourself, and it's kind of a skill from IBS in a way too, is what's the one or two questions that I absolutely have to answer to be able to reasonably understand the passage, and that would guide you into what the most important parts are. So anyway. Okay, I don't know, any three guys want to jump in and ask a question? In case you're listening at home, I'm saying guys because I only have three men on the video here with me right now. So no offense to the ladies, and I hope our female students will listen to this as well, but none of you are here right
now. My only question was, for this week's assignment, you mentioned to pay attention to how the New Testament writers would have probably used like the Septuagint and things of that nature. With that in mind, what do we have to pay attention to as we're trying? How does that affect what we have to pay attention to as we're working through our Hebrew?
Yeah, the key piece is going to be what you might observe, and this will come down to some of the English translations sometimes too. Is sometimes when a New Testament author's, well, actually many times when the New Testament author is quoting from the Old Testament, they're actually quoting the Septuagint. Now, most of the time, the Septuagint is basically it's literally just a translation of the actual text that you have in front of you, the Masoretic text. But what we do know from text criticism is sometimes there's variant readings. Like here's an example that isn't in our assignment. We dealt with this actually this week in OT520. When you read Psalm 8. If you're familiar with Psalm 8, you have that passage where it says, "What is a human that you're mindful of him?" And it talks about being a little lower than the angels, but there's also a reading where it could be a little lower than God. And like the Hebrew text supports that. But when you get to Hebrews, when Hebrews is quoting from that text in Hebrews chapter, I think it's chapter 2. Yeah. Hebrews clearly says angels.
Okay.
Right. And so if we were working off of that text, you would be looking at the Hebrew text, and you can get to, I should actually be looking at my Hebrew Bible here. You can understand how you can get to that, but that would be a place where it would be like, okay, the New Testament author is clearly using the Septuagint, so when I read the Hebrew, I need to be aware of something like that. That's essentially what I was getting at. And you also know that a lot of English translations will work backwards, and this is where it would affect the Hebrew. Some English translations work backwards from what the quotation is in the New Testament. And again, there's theological reasons for this. I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything maliciously, but they'll sometimes harmonize the New Testament with what the Old Testament says. So it looks like it says exactly the same thing, when perhaps it's not quite that simple, because maybe there is a different reading in the Septuagint from what the Masoretic text said, though you could potentially get to the reading. Is that making any sense, or am I missing the mark on that one there?
No, that was good and helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
So Dr. Russell,
Yes.
so then following up on that, then when we're talking about New Testament viewpoints, we should always then be consulting the Septuagint on top of the BHS, the Masoretic.
I can't really require, yes, actually, if you have Greek, now everybody in this class doesn't have Greek, so it's an unreasonable explanation, but yeah, when you're doing full-blown exegesis, you have the full biblical studies piece that, Greek and Hebrew work together really well. And this gets back to a canonical issue, which is, again, can of worms for what we're trying to do. But like what is the actual Old Testament for a Christian? And you could say, well, it's the Hebrew Bible. That's true for the Western Church. And what I mean by that, the Roman Catholic Church and Protestants, right? And that was decided in a sense when the Latin Vulgate was put in, what was produced, Jerome decided to go back to the Hebrew. The Eastern Church stayed with Septuagint, and then when you have the Great Schism, if you don't, Eastern Orthodox Church, and that would include the Coptics, the Church in Egypt, and then the Russian Orthodox Church, Greek Orthodox, all those churches that their Old Testament actually is a Septuagint, so they have a slightly different text at places than do Protestants and Roman Catholics. And, and some people like to be edgy once in a while. I'm not one of them. And then they just try to claim that the Christian Bible should be the Septuagint, but that's a can of worms for us. So it is good to be, that's why we're learning the languages, so you can kind of deal with these different pieces. And you want to be aware that English translations bounce back around, whether they privilege the Septuagint or they privilege the Masoretic text at different places.
Right. I recently downloaded the Accordance software just to try it out. I did the free one first because I was just trying to get used to it. So I find it really helpful when trying to, parse and everything like that. I mean, usually I use Bible Hub. But seeing as how, you do need to purchase things in order to kind of get more advanced with it, can I purchase the BHS, Septuagint and everything separately, or is there a particular package that you would recommend for those of us who are starting out with Accordance to purchase to help us out if we're going to resort to online, computer software such as that?
You know what? I actually can't answer that because as is always true, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and I got mine for free, and so I got everything because the seminary gets the they just literally loaded. I've built full blown, I don't know, $10,000 version of Accordance. So I can't answer you, and I hate to say it that way, but I really don't. So I would actually call Accordance and basically plead poverty, and which was not a lie, right? I mean, you're not and try to see if they would break it into pieces, which I don't know if they do. I know they try to sell packages, but the one thing I will say is a lot of the stuff they try to sell you is essentially worthless. It's just common domain things that you don't even need to buy. So I think you're right. I would try to pen down and just grab the actual BHS text that's parsable, searchable, maybe the Septuagint, and obviously grab yourself the Greek New Testament while you're doing it as well. And then maybe I don't know how they sell the pieces, but they're always trying to sell packages, and a lot of the stuff they package with it isn't worth it.
So how much more do you get out of that software versus like Bible Hub?
Yeah, good question. Well, see, you have to Bible Hub and I somehow, I didn't realize how good Bible Hub was, because I don't think it even was as good as it is just a couple of years ago. Because I've one of our students in our class asked a question about kind of a weird thing in Bible Hub about what was the last about Psalm 77, and I went and looked and I'm like, wow, you get the parsing, so Accordance is awesome if you can afford it, because it puts all the tools at your fingertips, but it's very expensive. And so if you just need basic parsing, I think you just stick with Bible Hub, honestly, because unless you have, again, I don't know what your financial means are, but I mean, if you got, a couple $1,000 to drop and get all that stuff, I mean, you can get commentaries and things. So, because what Accordance is really for, and they wouldn't like me saying this, other than being a vehicle to get electronic resources, which is what I thought, that's what Kindle was. because you can get a lot of stuff cheap on Kindle, just the e-copies of different commentaries. What accordance in these biblical software programs are for, they're nuclear concordances. And what I mean by that, I mean, the concordance I got, let's see, I have them right. Let's see, I like, a concordance, the good old fashioned concordance, you can buy this for a few bucks. Like this is this isn't a concordance, but I grabbed the wrong one. Where's well, actually you can see I don't even use the concordance because I have Hebrew here. Here's my old Hebrew concordance. I don't know if they sell these anymore. Like this is called the New Englishman's Hebrew Concordance. It's a really old piece, but how did this work? Yeah. You can look up Hebrew words. I mean, I don't know if you guys can't, it doesn't really, but basically you can go word for word and you can see where all the words are used, right? Accordance will do that for you, but what you can do if you learn how to use it properly, let's say you only want to find a word that's used in the identical PL form, or you're looking for an infinitive construct of a word, you can tag the concordance to only find the word you're looking for in a particular grammatical form. So if you're doing advanced exegesis and you want to check that out, that's helpful. The other thing that's really cool, and where I find one of the real advantages is if let's say you want to find every place in the Bible where righteousness and say faithfulness show up in the same place. A traditional concordance, you're doing two different searches and then you're going to have to put them together to see where they're at. Accordance or Logos can do that in a split second, and that's tremendously valuable. And it can also expand so that you can say anytime these two words are used within, say, 3 or 4 verses of each other. So that's a great feature. But if you're not going to do that, then you might as well just buy a concordance for like $25 or whatever they cost now. And I'm just being honest now too, because to me, it's about resourcing. Again, it's nice if you use Bible Hub, and I guess that can do the same for Greek that it can do for Hebrew. If you can get the parsing, that's a great resource, and praise to God that it's actually free, because this stuff is just available now. Because I didn't even know it was as good as it was. I have pointed students to some of these free things, but now, that flat out parsed everything. So if you really want to do, and the other thing that's nice about accordance, and you see it when I do the screenshots and I post them, is you can do the parallel versions. I think that's nice, but what you can also do, you can just go old school and buy a parallel Bible. You can buy a Bible that has the NIV and the ESV and stuff side by side. And so, so I'm not really answering your question, but I'm just saying if you want to use it for the powerful concordance that it is, it's worth the investment. But if you don't imagine yourself doing that very often, you can probably, take, say $300, buy a killer parallel Bible, buy some or Kindle versions of some commentaries, buy yourself a block of resources, and then you don't have to worry about having to upgrade it every time you get a new computer. And I'll say it, I did a Ph.D. with books. Now, if I would have had accordance, I would have saved myself about 7 months of research, because a lot of my work was doing concordance work, but I did it. And again, I'm not bragging, but this is a new tool that's a luxury and it's fantastic, but you don't need it. As long as you have, now that Bible Hub parses the words, because you can do the grammatical analysis now, because you can get the parsing off. I don't want to discourage you. Does that help? I'm just trying to be honest. And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the follow-up question would be, how do I know which commentaries to stay away from? What are good commentaries? Because I wouldn't want to cite something from a commentary that you deem to be like non-scholarly.
Yeah, I was joking with students today on campus that you can tell if a commentary is scholarly by how thick it is, in a sense, right? So that's one check if it's pretty long. I think, now you guys remind me, because my brain's scrambled. I think I shot a video that shared the Psalms commentaries that I like the most. Is that true? Now, because
I think so.
Yeah. So that shows you the series, and basically my comments about the series, like because most of those commentaries came out of a series. Those comments would be true for really any book in the Bible. And so, basically what you can, anything that's say from the 19th century is probably too old to use, even if they're thicker ones. So it's mostly these modern commentary series. I mean, if you want evangelical commentaries, let me just grab them. All my stuff's sitting right here, but like, just to show a couple again. Let's see. Like these are, let's see, I want Baker too. Let's see. If you're looking for good evangelical commentaries, which I think it's good. You always want to have a couple of nice conservative commentaries, traditional commentaries. Like this is, they have Old and New Testament. This is the New International. I mean, this is on Isaiah. I just grabbed the ones I could see. The NIV application commentary. And this is a nice one because a lot of times Zondervan will put these on sale for $4.99 in the Kindle edition, which is fantastic, right? Because I mean, this is probably $30 or something. I picked up a bunch of these on my Kindle this year. This is from a Baptist perspective. It's called the American Commentary, but this is a good evangelical conservative commentary series. And then Word Biblical Commentary is really good from evangelical side. Old Testament library or more critical commentaries, Hermeneia. Let's see what else I got over here.
Well, no, I was going to say, excuse me, you can actually use Asbury Scholar, and what you do is put in Psalms commentary ebook, and it gives you a whole list of commentaries that you can access via PDF, and it gives you like the table of contents and everything, and you just kind of click on where you want to go with Psalm. And I use it all the time. I even use it when I'm preaching. So like I rarely really buy commentaries. I have a few at home myself, but the Asbury Scholar really is a lifesaver when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I've looked at that before, so thanks, Manny. It was more so just ensuring that I'm not using anything that.
And if you ever have a quick question, Linnell, just shoot me an email. I mean, if you catch me during most times of the day, I can get, especially something like that, that's an easy email response. I mean, there's certain, like if you hit me at the wrong time of day, you maybe wait until the next morning. But if you hit me an email during the day, I don't usually look at email on Sunday. But like other than on Sunday, or if it's on Saturday, it needs to usually be in the mornings. I try to wind things down early afternoon for myself so I can take the rest of Saturday and most of Sunday off. But most days, if you hit me with an email on a quick question like that, you'll hear from me fairly quickly.
Okay. And is there a way to kind of sanity check my selections from the Arnold Troy book?
You mean before you turn your work in, you mean?
Yeah, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, sometimes I see like, could be more than one choice.
Oh, the answer is yes on that. Now, I guess if you're really feeling lost on Arnold Choi, and there could be others that are listening to this, probably ought to set up another Zoom session just to kind of clarify some stuff, because I can work, and if nobody else, I mean, I could work with you for a few minutes too. So we could go. I need to grade some. I'm a little behind on the grading, but I'm going to get one paper. I'm going to get both papers that I think I'm back behind two now. I'm going to have both grammatical analysis back with feedback this week. One for sure by Friday. The other one will probably come back Saturday, which is getting kind of late. But you're going to get feedback, so hopefully that'll clarify. And as far as the class goes, these have been practiced. So, the one that's going to count is going to be the one that you're going to turn in with the very final paper. So we can sort through any problems between now and the end of the semester, and I can work with anybody that's struggling. But again, I'm a little behind on that feedback, which would have been helpful to really address what you're asking about.
Okay, and that's fine. I was a little concerned about that because once I go back and watch the video, it's like, how did I miss that? I see it, but when I'm going through, I'm like, it could be this or this, and then it's like I find myself trying to choose.
Well, you know what? If in that case, if you're getting one of the ones that because I'm not putting a lot of choices down and running through the video. What you should do is you should put down, if you think there's a couple, put them both down, because I'm trying to give you guys sort of if I think it's fairly obvious, and I guess that's probably what it sounds like. But there are places sometimes when you're not sure, so you can put a couple down because this is supposed to be useful for you exegetically. And so you can decide what the right label is when you do the actual exegesis, right? Does that make sense? Because this is supposed to be heuristic, because if you, in a sense, if you lock in on the right answer, you pretty much just tunnel visioned yourself. So part of the idea of looking at grammar is to see what it could mean. Now,
okay, and so if I have two choices, then I can kind of write about why it could be both.
yeah, and what would the implication for the translation be that at that point? But and that's actually helpful. So that's actually really doing the work well in a sense. So yeah, that's not a problem.
Well, in that particular case, I'll be okay.
Okay. Hey, Josh, did you have a question or two?
The only other question I had.
So I've seen you guys' names. You're on tape, so I apologize. I hope that's not a problem for.
No, you're fine. Is grammatical analysis, are the principles essentially the same when you're doing them in New Testament and Greek? Because I think I'm getting it here, and we did it a little bit differently in New Testament exegesis. So obviously different language and different variables, but essentially are the principles the same?
Yes, they are, and you probably have. Where's my Greek book at over here? So you probably have Wallace, maybe his book.
Yes.
I can't find any of my books today. I wonder what I did with it. Well, it should be right behind me. I don't see it. No, maybe I'll let somebody.
That this one?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So it must be behind me someplace. But yeah, it's and the thing with Greek's a little bit more precise, and it's and also more complicated. That allows it to be a little bit more precise. But it is the same. It's the same. And I would say grammatical analysis in some ways is even more powerful with Greek, because of the amount of precision that you can get with that and the variables that come in. But yeah, you can do it with both testaments.
So as a follow-up, if I'm doing the Greek, I'm doing the parsing, and then Wallace's book would help sift through what Arnold and Choi are kind of doing to some degree.
Yeah, and I apologize. Somebody just stuck their head on my door. You just asked if you're doing it in Greek. So finish the last half of your question.
Yeah. So after you do the parsing, in Hebrew, we're going to Arnold and Choi, kind of working through there. For Greek, Wallace's book would be a good resource to go through the syntax there, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what I would also say. In a sense, the resources that are available for doing grammatical analysis are better in Greek than they are for Hebrew.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And also, thank goodness we don't have you don't learn one vocabulary in your Greek class and have to relearn another vocabulary for your syntax book. The terminology dichotomy between Cook, Homestead, and Arnold Choi is problematic, and it makes it harder than it needs to be.
Okay.
But you won't have that in Greek. Nobody's come up with, I don't think, a new verb categories in Greek. They're using the same ones they've been using for a long time. Thank goodness.
Thank you.
All right, anything else, gentlemen?
It's been enlightening.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
it's been good. The only thing, Dr. Russell, whenever I watch your videos, by the way, love them, by the way. When you're going through the syntax, sometimes I get a little lost following, because the Hebrew verses and the BHS are a little different than the English ones. And so sometimes I get frustrated because I'm thinking like I'm doing the wrong verse.
Yes.
But I'm really trying to follow, because Bible Hub really helps in putting it exactly with what it is. But when I'm trying to do it in person, can you briefly just explain to me why it is that the English does sometimes go a little off from the BHS or vice versa? Because I'm trying to understand how that still works.
This is mostly a Psalms problem, by the way. Praise the Lord. For the most of the Bible, it's exactly the same. The issue in the Psalms
I think that's why I got confused.
Yeah. So it is just the Psalms. And what it is many times the superscription, which in English is clearly, it's just not part of the verses. A lot of times the superscription in Hebrew is verse 1. And so it throws everything off just by a verse. And there's a couple other places in the Hebrew Bible where you have some tension, but again, it's really just the Psalms, and it's not going to be every Psalm. It just happens to be some of the Psalms that we're working on. So don't have to worry. For the most part, you're not going to have an issue with it.